Hello children. In the last video, we started that how does the friction arise? That how does the irregularities present on the surface oppose the motion of object? For that, let us take two surfaces and both the surfaces are having irregularities on them. Suppose one surface, this is one surface. It is having irregularities. Let us take this is surface A and another surface which is placed on it, the surface B, which is placed in contact with the first surface. When we put the another surface B on the surface A, both the surfaces come in contact with each other. And we say the irregularities present on the surfaces come in contact each other. As they are in contact with each other, now we observe that the irregularities on both the surfaces got interlocked. The irregularities on both the surfaces got interlocked. Interlocking means the up of one surface go into the down of another surface and vice versa. It is taking place irregularly, randomly. Up of one surface go into the down of another surface and it takes place on both the surfaces. That we call interlocking of irregularities takes place on the two surfaces. Once they got interlocked, if we want to move the upper surface, we have to apply the force. We are applying force to move the surface B. But at the contact, what happens? Both the irregularities got interlocked. While we apply the force, that interlocking oppose the applied force. If we increase the applied force gradually, what happens? The interlocking between the irregularities get loose. It decreases. As the force increases gradually, at one stage, the interlocking become open. The locking of irregularities released. In that situation, the upper surface start to move. Till then, the surfaces do not move. That means the surface B not able to move on the surface A. And that opposition due to the interlocking of irregularities for the applied force gives the friction. So, friction is due to the interlocking of irregularities on both the surfaces which oppose the applied force. That is the cause of the friction. Since the irregularities present on all the surfaces, friction also exists on all the surfaces. This is how friction arises. Now we will see this friction between the two surfaces depends on some factors. It depends on some factors. If the interlocking is stronger, the friction is greater. If the interlocking is weaker, the friction is less. And that strongness of interlocking depends on some factor that we will see one by one. Here, factors on which friction depends. Suppose we have one surface, it is A, and we put some weight on this surface. Suppose it is 1 kg, weight is placed. Now this surface is having some irregularities. The surface of weight is also having some irregularities. On this portion, they are in physically contact with each other. Since the weight of every object is always acting vertically downward, the weight is due to the gravitational force. Since the weight is acting always vertically downward, this weight pushes the surface in the downward direction, due to which the interlocking takes place on the irregularities. So here, for this weight, the interlocking takes place. Then what we are going to do, we are going to put one more weight, that is 1 kg. Now total it is 2 kg. Here just we increase the weight of object placed on the table. 2 kg is placed. But the portion which is in contact with the surface remains same. When 1 kg was placed, this portion was in contact with the table. When we add 1 more kg, again the portion in contact with the table is same. So on adding 1 more kg, what happens? This also, its weight also acting vertically downward. Now on the table, on the surface, the weight increases. Weight increases, the force increases, which causes the interlocking becomes stronger. When the interlocking increases, the friction also increased. Therefore, friction depends on weight of the object. Friction depends on weight of the object placed on the surface. Object placed on the surface. And then second factor. Here we put 1 kg object on the surface. Suppose this is iron. Then we replace this iron, 1 kg of iron, by any other material which is of the same weight. Again it is 1 kg, but here the material is changed. Material changes, the surface, nature of surface also changes. On changing the nature of surface, again we find the friction is different. It is different. So it depends on nature of surface also. Nature of surface. So friction depends on these two factors. If we increase the weight, friction increases because it is hard to push the object. More force is required. More force is required because friction increases. Second factor, nature of surface. If we change the surface continuously, if we put more polished surface, then put a less polished surface, then put a rough surface, on all the surfaces, we require different force to push to move the object. So we are changing the surface, their nature also changes. So friction depends nature of the surface. These are the factors, main factors on which friction between two surfaces depends. Weight increases, friction increases. Nature of surface, when we replace the surface with a greater rough surface, friction also increases. But one thing, if we put a material which is made up of iron, here this is the iron, the surface is having some roughness. Then if we take that iron, suppose it is 1 kg, if we take that iron is hammered or melted, same amount of iron is melted and reshaped. Reshaped means we increase the surface area, we increase the area, but still that iron is having 1 kg and the nature of surface is also same. That means weight same, nature of surface same, but what is different? Difference is, in the earlier case, the surface which was in contact with the lower surface was less. Here the surface of contact is increased. On increasing the surface area, by keeping the nature and weight same, the friction remains also same. Friction will not change, because on increasing the area, the same weight is distributed on the wider area, but still the nature of surface and weight is same. Therefore, friction is independent. Friction is independent of surface area. Independent of surface area. If we change the surface area, friction will not change. Now these are the factors. Next we'll continue in the next session.